Welcome everyone. We're now able to move into the next phase of setting this project up, which is project scheduling. And pretty much when you're establishing your labor codes, as we discussed in the previous video, we also, at that same time, we're dealing with project scheduling because we want our labor codes, our labor codes to actually match what we're doing in the field. And we've all lived with schedules in the past, and a schedule that doesn't really indicate what you're trying to do is of real it's really not useful at all. It's almost confusing. So what we try and do is build our own project schedule to match the general contractor's schedule, but they're actually things that we're doing and we're charging time to. So with that said, we're going to move on down to our next slide. If we can get this thing to, hold on, let me click here and then we'll move down. Okay, this is part of another part of our training for the Academy of Electrical Construction Management. And it's under PE 220, which is setting up your project schedule and fragments. And fragments are probably something you haven't heard of a lot, but in that class on PE 220, we get into that in full detail. But what we're going to go through here is plenty of orientation for you to be able to use the current schedule we have for the Tulalip project. So as we move on, for each project that Sturgeon Electric is involved with, the project schedule is established to assist in the overall prosecution of the work. And these project schedules should be tailored to fit the needs of each individual project and is an absolute key element of setting up a project. We're going to get into that contractually in further discussions, but the essence of your contract evolves around what we're doing here. So if the schedule says we're supposed to do something and we don't do it, we have a problem with our contract and we may be in violation of our contract. So it's really important that we set it up to where the schedule equals what the contract said, so you guys out in the field don't have to worry about that. As long as you make your schedules, you're fine. And if you can't make your schedules, but it wasn't your fault, we'll at least know why. And the more consistent your project schedule is to the schedule published by the general contractor, the better. And what that essentially means is we've all been on jobs where the GC walks into the foreman meeting, throws out a bunch of paper and says, this is the way we're going to do it. And you look at your schedule and it doesn't match it in any way, form, or fashion. And what we have done here, and is typically what we do for all project schedules, is if the general contractor has an activity in his schedule, we try and adhere to it and figure out a way that our work coordinates to that work activity per se. And in the case of the Tulalip project, we're right on sync. If we have a cost code, it is also in the schedule in the same format. So we're really in good shape on this one. Now, there are many different types of schedules, and we don't really this is not the time to sit and try and learn how Primavera versus Excel versus Microsoft Project and on work. We can kind of give you some ideas on what they're all about. In some cases, you're going to be issued a project schedule that has been generated by a software package called Primavera. And Primavera is the top end of scheduling out there right now. And it's an extremely difficult program to run, and it's an extremely it's very costly. I mean, a single user license on that thing can exceed $6,000 before you pay for the yearly updates and everything else. So in many other cases, you're going to be given a bar chart that may have been generated by Microsoft Project, and sometimes you see them in handwritten formats or in Excel. And because there are so many different ways to develop a project schedule, the most important part of our work is to use the information given to us by the general contractor and establish a work schedule for ourselves that can be easily understood and updated. Because if we can't do that, what's the point of having it? And if the means that you use to schedule your project are beyond the abilities of those using it, then there's going to be little chance that you're going to use it as a tool to assist you in completing your work. So you could go out and buy a $6,000 copy of Primavera and try and put somebody on it to learn it in their spare time. But by the time you got finished with the project, you would never have a schedule that made any sense. We are now to the point where we are going to establish the format for this project. And before we got to this part of building a workable schedule for this project, we first established the cost codes, the labor codes that would be used. And in the process of establishing a work schedule, it's very important that you study the schedule given to you by the general contractor and then try and tailor your work functions to fit his plan as closely as possible. That being said, that's easier said than done. And ideally, on a lot of your larger projects, we would be involved in the development of the general contractor schedule so that when it is published, it makes sense to our work versus everybody else's work. But in the case of these smaller jobs, such as this one, what we've done is just taken their general contractor schedule and then tailored our work as much as possible to fit into it. And management's done some good work in coordinating that schedule with the general contractor so that was possible. So that's part of the management aspects of it. So, and then as we said before, it is extremely important to all your staff that they understand that this is the commitment your company has made to your client, and that no matter what you've agreed to complete your work, that it's going to have to be in accordance with this schedule. So the schedule becomes the basis or the framework of your contract. And that's a really hard thing for a lot of people to understand is, well, I slipped a day here. Well, guess what? That's your contract, and there are penalties for causing other people damages or delays or whatever, equally as much as there's if a person holds you up for 2 or 3 days and you're unable to do your work or you have to accelerate to do your work, you should be entitled to that money associated with that. So the schedule just gives us a framework in which to establish our contract requirements as they go on a daily basis. So we then continue down, and let's see here. This particular project is essentially a remodel renovation of the guest rooms inside a casino hotel resort. And the work required for this project is really related to upgrading and replacing branch circuitry and lighting that has been detailed through a series of flag notes, details, and drawings. Another favorable aspect of this project is that the general contractor has compiled a baseline schedule along that was coordinated by your management staff, which includes your electrical activities as well as all the other trades activities. So you should be able to see if an earlier contractor is supposed to be done with his work so you can start your work. If he's not done, that's causing you a delay, and we'll be able to track that through this process. And while the general contractor compiled the schedule using Primavera, which is the preferred high end of all scheduling, we really don't have the person and the software necessary to achieve it. And in our case, it's really not necessary. So as a result of that, we've kind of moved on to a process of using Excel. You know, it's Excel gives us the opportunity to make it very clear as to the work required on our part and the time allowed for us to complete each individual work task per floor and per quadrant. And as you can see, in the labor cost codes, we've already established a series of 11 work codes. And those are duplicated per floor and per quadrant of the building. So if you're not quite sure what all this means, please go back to the previous video related to your labor cost codes. Watch it again, and just and come up with your questions so that you do get a good understanding of that before you move on. And then we'll move on to the first thing that we're going to do here is really orient you to your project schedule and go through the mechanics of how it works for all you guys in the field. The most important aspect of this project is that it should work for every person working in the field. And if you're in any way confused on this way the schedule works, then you should bring it up to the attention of your field and office managers, saying, "Hey guys, I don't quite understand what's going on here. Help me out." And hopefully these videos will help you along with your project managers, your general foremans, all that stuff. But the most important thing to remember is that the project schedule is a tool for the productive field labor first. That's what it's here for. It's for you guys in the field to know what it is you're doing one day to the next. And you can kind of think ahead and get your materials in the right place, make sure your tools are on the right floors, that type of thing. And on the next slide, we're going to go ahead and look at the project schedule for the 9th floor. And we have the schedule broken out into each floor so that you can individually look at any one floor, or you can look at the overall schedule. And that kind of gives you a good roadmap to look at what's happening next week or what's happening 2 months down the road. So please take the time to review these schedules as they relate to the work you're going to be doing. And that'll kind of give you a good roadmap for the next 6 months or so. And here again, if you have any problems or questions, let's do it now. Ask the questions early. And let's get everybody on the same track, because once we get this thing rolling, it's going to be a real fun way to go build a job and have a good time doing it. And this also applies to all the other trades, because obviously we have sheetrockers, we have painters, we have all these guys, and we may find that one of them's having a problem adhering to their schedule. And if that's the case, we have to figure out a workaround or some sort of way of resolving the project so it doesn't cost us a fortune trying to fix somebody else's problems. So when you go into your meetings, on your weekly scheduling meetings or project, or just field meetings, at least you'll have a sheet of paper in front of you that says, "Oh yeah, here's here, and here's what's happening, and here's my problems here," and that type of thing. So you'll have enough good information and data to be able to substantiate the problems that you're going through. And as we move through this video, I'm going to go ahead and put a schedule up in a live format so that you can see what I am doing to fill out the schedule using Excel. And it should make it real easy for you to do the same thing with your mouse on your Excel spreadsheet and go on and be able to update these schedules very quickly and very easily. So let's go ahead and move into our first look at the project schedule. Okay, so what I've done is I've opened up the Excel spreadsheet that actually has all of our schedules here in a typical layout that you would normally see. And this is very typical for your 3-week look aheads. I'm sure you guys have seen a lot of these. But basically what we've done is we have the activities here, and you can see right here that the 93991 is a DJB code, or I think you guys are calling them JCA codes nowadays, but it's still the same code. This is your labor work code, and we now see that it's called demo. And in the general contractor schedule, he had a time allocated, which is what we have up in the legend as planned. So if we were to come in here and we say, well, guess what? We didn't really get there on that day, but we were actually able to get it done on these 3 days, and we finished it on the 3rd day, we would say completed, right? So what we've done is we've said we have an actual date when we started, an actual day we were working, and then the day that we actually completed the work. So we know that we slipped the schedule 1 day here. And hopefully we can look at the master general contractor schedule and see if that affected us. And this is clearly not a case that we want to do, is slipping days, but at least we know what happened. So if somebody comes and accuses us of it, there's no sense in lying about it. If we weren't able to make it, let's call it what it is. But at the same time, then we know that we need to correct it when we go to the next floor and the floor after that and the floor after that. Now you're going to see that these are GC planned activities that are kind of highlighted in this orange color. And that's really what the general contractor schedule is going to say when they give you their look-aheads every week. When you're in a meeting, you're only going to see what's in the orange right here. You're going to see this one and each one of these activities. And you can see that where we're at right here, which is the GC planned, that there really is no activity in the master schedule. So we know that that's not going to show up in their schedule. However, what we did was we created a code, and it's the 9th floor, quadrant 3, work code 110, and that's the rough end prefab. So that's really when we get further into the job, if we can find ways to do prefab that will save us work over here, here, and here, then we would start charging our time here, our actual work going here, so that we could cut a couple of days off the schedule down here. Then that's what this prefab's about. But then we move into electrical roughing at head walls. And now we know that we're moving into May right now. So here's this. So these should actually be done. And if you get a chance, you should go back and see if you can document when they actually occurred and just fill it in. Just put an A here and an A here, or if it's an actual, if you actually did work that day, an A. Then sometimes we'll find that you don't work for a few days and then you come back. So, and this is the worst case scenario because we know something happened that didn't let you finish your work, but you still had to come back and do it. But by doing that, that's great. And if we know that you went back and actually worked that day, but you really didn't finish till this day, that's where we would put the completed. So this is just a real easy way using just A's and C's, and actuals and completed, for us to have a general idea and for you guys to have a general idea on what happened on that floor. And if the general contractor starts moving these dates up or back, one or the other, you're going to figure that out as well. So he's either accelerating you or he's experiencing delay that's causing us more time on the job than we originally planned. So just fill these out, and then what will happen is every week you're going to fill it out from the previous week before and just fill in that week. So for this week, you're going to start filling in here. So let's just go ahead and clear the contents here. And I'll just clear contents. And we'll just go ahead and clear it here as well. and clear. And we can go and get rid of these two. And that way you got an open schedule here. But this is really just for talking, and so you guys get a general feel of the keystrokes and all that's required. It's basically very, very simple. So I think all of you guys have the ability to do this. And if you don't worry about bringing and asking for help, because we can find tutorials, and I'll do videos for you, or anybody in the management staff will help you in getting up to speed on any kind of software you need. So, but the point is now it's May 2nd. We know that you're supposed to be doing electrical rough-in on the 9th floor in quadrant 3 for this week, and it's going to last all week. But we don't see any other activities that you're really supposed to be doing. So, and then we come down here to the sequence 4, which is the other side of the building. And then let's go ahead and talk about that for a minute. You can see that it's sequence 3, which is rooms 922 through 944. Okay, however, we go down here, and sequence 4 is 901 through 920. So if you really want to understand the 9th floor, you kind of have to look at both of them. But from what we can see here, based on the general contractor schedule, the only thing we're really supposed to be doing is electrical rough-in on both quadrants, both sides of the building. So, and there's no other activities that are really supposed to be happening. And if they are, don't hesitate to put in. If you think you're having to do some demo over here, just put an A right there, because you charge time to it. Obviously, if you're charging time, make sure you put an A right here. And that goes for if it's 2 hours, 5 hours, or 8 hours, right? If you're doing anything, we want to know that you did something there, because that will kind of help us as well, the team overall, to be able to say, look, I'm moving my guys around 3 times a day just to get anything done around here. And that's not the way we originally bid the job, and it's definitely not the way to make any money on a job. So then we can sit down with a general contractor with good information, show him what it is we're up against, and let him try and fix that problem. And if he can't fix the problem, at least he knows that he needs to compensate us for the lost time of moving guys around and around and around. So that's how simple this thing is you basically have your 11 work activities right down the line, when they're supposed to happen, and then you fill in on the clear areas or the white areas what it is you're actually doing for each week. When you're finished with that week, you can either print it out or forward it as an email to Greg, your project manager, and say, here you go, or to, however you guys decide you want to best do it. And then, it's always nice if you guys can afford the time to do it, is Mondays have just a sit-down meeting for the week coming up and look at the schedule from the previous week. And that way, everybody can sit down, kind of get a game plan, because we can see that we're on this week now, but next week, what is it we're supposed to be doing? Well, guess what? There's not a lot of work here. It's saying that according to the general contractor, you've got a Monday to do some work, but that's about it. So you got to start figuring out, can I do some prefab on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday that's going to help me on the next floor down or whatever. You need to kind of figure that part out so you can level your manpower as time goes on. But rather than getting into it, let's just focus on the first week, which is this week here. And let's just try and get all that data in so that we can all as a team start working on it come early next week. And the more information we get by Wednesday or Thursday, we're going to have a pretty good idea of what's going on so that we can make some good decisions to keep you guys working steadily on projects and, work tasks that have been organized. So really, that's about as simple as you can get. And each floor is down here. So you can go from the 9th to the 8th to the 7th. They're all going to be the same. Of course, the dates are going to change, obviously. And you'll have a May, June, July, all the way out. But we tried to keep it to where you could look at a small amount of work, and then you can roll up or roll down. If you want to look at the overall job, we can roll it up. And if you only want to look at a specific part, we just roll it down. So that's about as simple as we get. And once again, we'd love to hear your feedback on it. And as you get more involved in it on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, let us know how that's working and how that integrates with your input to Construction Monkey as well. Because once we figure this part out, if we know that we're putting an actual down here, this is a good example. Let's say I have an actual right here. Then in Construction Monkey, we should be able to say that you had to remobilize your workforce for some darn reason. And that reason should be that you were unable to complete when you were scheduled to complete it because somebody hadn't finished their work. So then we put a cause and effect to it. Just checking that you had a delay doesn't do anybody much good. But if we know what the delay is and who was responsible for it, that's going to help us out quite a bit, because then we can give the general contractor a much better understanding of what it is we're doing. So I hope all of this is useful for you guys. And I really do think once you get into it for a week or two, you're going to really enjoy the fact that you can take a lot of these activities, figure out how to do some prefab up here so that you're not doing all this work in here. You're doing it mainly in a shop, and you're taking advantage of those downtimes when you really don't have a place to work. Because the way they've done it, and that's one of the intrinsic problems of this project, is they're letting you have 2 floors at a time. Now, if you had 4 floors, you could keep a workforce fairly stable. But when you only have 2, it's pretty hard to keep all of your guys working to where you got 6 guys, maybe 8 guys working full time, and you're not having to pull them in and pull them out. But in this case, that's not the deal. So what we have to do is figure out ways to better use our time to where when we go up and we're installing prefab, perhaps in the bathrooms and the head walls and the media walls. So instead of having 7 days here in the field, we only have 3 days because we did it all up here in prefab when we wanted to do the work. And that way nobody's having to move off the job and they're still working on the same exact stuff as they were anyway. And they're essentially going to be the guys in the prefab shop that are going to install it in the future. So it's not like you got one crew that just does that and another crew that does this. Could be that you're pulling the rough-end guys and throwing them in the prefab shop 2 or 3 days here and there to just get ready for the next bump of labor that you need to get through. So once again, think about it. Send us all your questions, and please feel free to make any comments you'd like to. And we hope this really helps you out in coordinating your project. So with that said, we'll go ahead and close this video up.